Welcome to tonight's episode of Carl Says Anything and Everybody Listens. Oh, no, we're going to talk today about empathy. Okay. And empathy is something that I struggled with for a long time and something that I think is the pole star of our recovery. I've kind of joked that if you just had the serenity prayer and an understanding of empathy and a desire to implement it, you don't need much else. Now we can relate, and I can do this another time, all the 12 steps in the 12-step program to the serenity prayer and empathy and oversimplify the whole thing, much to everybody's chagrin. But we're not going to do that. But what I want to talk to you about is the idea of using empathy. So in our addictions, we hurt people and we hurt ourselves, which means we're not using self care and we're not taking care of or being mindful of others. Okay. So if you can learn to be empathetic and go, is my conduct, is my behavior, is how I'm acting hurting someone? And how is it making them feel? If I can learn to not make those things, uh, my actions, that is, hurt someone, if I can figure out how to find out how other people feel and keep that in account and behave in accord with that, I can do a lot less harm, okay, to myself and others. Addiction robs us of our empathy. We've got to take from ourselves, we've got to take from others, we've got to hurt ourselves, we've got to hurt others, we've got to lie, we've got to destroy, and we have to turn off our care for others in order to feed and run with our addictions. And so my challenge to you is figure out where your relationship with empathy is and then combine that with the basis of the serenity prayer, right? There's things you can affect and there's things you can't. And there is the wisdom to know the difference between the things you can change and the things you can't change. But as to the things you can change and you can affect, you use empathy. And if you always are acting with empathy and you're always trying to practice your empathy, and even when, a charitable act, for instance, just service of helping set up the chairs at a meeting or doing some volunteer work at a local shelter or even just raking your neighbor's lawn. Those acts of kindness are how we practice empathy. We go, how would that make someone feel? How does that make me feel? And if it's a positive feeling, and it's a positive giving to somebody, and it's something that would be pleasing, not something, not being a pleaser though, right? Because sometimes addicts also have those habits as well, being a pleaser and making sure that other people, wanting other people to like you and adore you. That's not what we're talking about with empathy. It's how am I going to make them feel? So, there's a great one where there's a mode. There's a shoveled walkway that's right next to a house, and the guy shoveled half the walkway, but not the neighbor's walkway. It's very unempathetic. If you're going to run the shovel 3 feet, you can run the shovel 6 feet, right? That's the kind of thing I'm talking about. But I'm also talking about empathy for ourselves and thinking about what we need and where we need to be. Now, tonight's stream, I'm playing around with a little bit. I've got this program here called Restream. So, we can do some cool things like throw up a little bar like this. We'll hide that. Um, but we have the ability to show chats as well. So I can throw up the overlay, and we've got our first person on the chat here. It says, "Hello, I'm new here. This gambling is horrible." Um, I was a gambling addict. Okay, gambling is where I came from into the recovery. Do I have other bad habits? Do I have other things I need to work on? Sure, but gambling's what got me in jail. It's what cost me my clients. So, Keisha, what I would tell you is this: there's hope. I'm coming up on 11 years without gambling. Okay, but before that, gambling was my full-time job. I was literally running in and out of the casino on a regular basis to the point where I spent more time worried about how I'm going to gamble than I did about my clients' money, my duty to the law, my duty to my family, and of course, as I always like to point out, my duties to myself as well. I can remember staying awake for several days at a time just to continue gambling. So, Keisha, I appreciate the comment. And by the way, in the future, I would like to do with this format and ask me anything. Okay. So, probably this Sunday, maybe 3 o'clock, I'll formalize that and put an invite out on Facebook for those of you who follow me there. Um, we'll put together an Ask Me Anything on Sunday. The Bills game's on at like 6:30, so we'll be well wrapped up by then, right? But maybe an hour of Ask Me Anything. I'd like to know where you guys are at, what you're thinking, what recovery topics you want to talk about. But I started this out to talk about empathy, right? And empathy is an issue in all of our lives where we have to determine, are our actions and how are we making others feel, and how are we treating others? That's an understanding of empathy as I understand it, right? And if you can learn to act with empathy, then it becomes very hard to act like an addict. So when an addict would say, to hell with it, I'm not going to pick up my kid, or say, I don't care, I don't need to show up at work today, or who cares if I'm hungover at my son's baseball game, right? Because what difference does it make? That's really thinking about yourself and not thinking about how you're affecting others, right? You need to be present in the moment. You want them to know you care about the event. You want them to know that you care about them. And you want to know that you care about how they feel. That's the key to empathy, right? And so if you're focused on those things, it's very hard to carry out the sabotage that an addict wants to carry out in their life. So that's why I say focus on empathy. And if you're just joining us, this is a live event. You can watch it from the beginning. You can go back. It'll be on the Facebook page. It'll be on YouTube. We're testing this on Instagram. You can follow me on Blue Sky. I've got the information here. Uh, but tonight's just a little test of this new software. Talk a little bit about empathy. See where we're all at. It's Thursday. Weekend's coming up. That's a big time for a lot of addiction, right? The weekend used to be what I lived for because that's when I could hit that casino on Friday night. I didn't have to drive back to Carlisle until Sunday, sometimes not until Monday, right? And they put me up in a hotel room and, lavish me with all that fun stuff that they do in casinos. And I didn't care. I knew the problem and the damage I was causing, but I lacked empathy for myself and for others. I lacked the right mindset. Now, I've heard people say, "Oh, well, it's just an addiction and that's just something you can turn on and off." I don't really believe that's true. We're gonna do another one about the disease model of addiction versus the moral fouling of addiction, and how we frame those things, and we'll talk about that. But again, for tonight, all I want you to concentrate on is empathy. And Keisha, thanks for the comment. I'm going to sign off. But remember, Sunday coming up here, we're going to watch the Bills game at 6:30 because we're all big Bills fans, of course. I'm sure some of you are Ravens fans, and I do feel bad for you. But what we're going to do is we're going to do like a 3 o'clock on Sunday. Ask me anything to talk about addiction and addiction related things. All right. I'll have a few more short streams before then, more content on the Facebook page and on the recovery group. But I intend to be sitting down here on Sunday and talking to you at length. So get your questions ready.